But we have with us now my friend Senator John McCAIN of Arizona. John, thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Fred, and you're doing a wonderful job with your program, and I thank you for informing the American people. But our listeners should know that Senator Thompson and I sat next to each other in the United States Senate, and I miss you every day.
Well, I appreciate that, John. I was thinking about that very thing, and I remember back in the tough days in the Clinton administration, things were going bad over in the Balkans and Kosovo and so forth, and you were always absolutely respectful of the prerogatives and responsibilities of the President of the United States. I was upset with Clinton a lot, and sometimes, in retrospect, I think my lack of confidence in him personally and what he was doing shaded my judgment. But you've always been that way, and from what I hear, you've been saying, which is not a whole lot on this thing with McChrystal, is that this is the president's decision. Why is civilian authority so important in our country, John?
Well, I think, Fred, that as much as we may feel emotional, that we have to go back to Harry Truman and General MacArthur in recent history. General MacArthur was a national hero with such stature we can't even comprehend the way Americans looked at World War II leaders in those days, and Harry Truman fired him because it was pretty clear that he was not carrying out the orders of the commander-in-chief, and was very disrespectful of him, and there was huge outcry
as I recall,
in the country.
John, in reading about that, MacArthur wanted to invade China, didn't he?
Yeah, and he was basically pushing for that strategy, which, by the way, in retrospect, I think would have been disastrous. But he was pushing hard with members of Congress going outside the chain of command and was very disrespectful to President Truman. So, but the point is, more importantly, I guess, is that our nation was founded on the fundamental principle that the military is subordinate to the commander-in-chief, the civilian authority. And if the military usurps civilian authority, then obviously that would be an attack on the very foundations of our country. And so I respect the president's decision on this thing. I just feel so bad that it's all happened because, look, these were people that I think were in unguarded moments, but there's still no excuse for that kind of talk, no matter what. And they're brave Americans. But finally, could I just add one additional point, though, and that is that the president is risking losing everything if he sticks to this mid-next year date for withdrawal. We have to leave only on basis of conditions, not on a date certain, and the date certain that he and his spokesperson, Mr. Gibbs, keeps reiterating is undermining the confidence of our friends and encouraging our enemies. And that's why you see Karzai doing the things he's doing. That's why you see a number of things happening in the region, because they're not sure we're staying. In fact, there's great skepticism. And they have to stay, and they have to accommodate.
John, that is the underlying problem here. I think that it undercuts the strategy over there, because our friends and foes alike are watching this debate. Is that a hard deadline that we're going to start withdrawal? Gates says, well, it'll depend on the circumstances at the time. Biden is quoted as saying, expect a lot of troops to move out of there. And, if the president would take this opportunity to change a lot of things, not just one person, but to change the approach, the strategy, and maybe the entire State Department team that's over there, that'd be progress, wouldn't it?
I think so, and also I think what's so important here is that General Petraeus, who testified before the Armed Forces Committee, basically said it's condition-based. So did Secretary Gates. So did the Secretary of State. But the president's spokesman, Mr. Gibbs, when asked, said, I quote the president, it's, quote, etched in stone. And this Jonathan Alter book, Exercise in Trash Journalism, quotes Vice President Biden. And the quote is, a whole lot of people are going to be coming out the middle of 2011, quote, you can bet on it. Now, that is in direct contradiction to what Petraeus, Gates, and Clinton have said. And the president has not said basically anything besides that we're withdrawing. In order to regain credibility with friends and enemies, the president is going to have to say, look, I'd like to start withdrawing in 2011, but it will be conditions-based and conditions-based only. He has to say that. Otherwise, I'm afraid that our chances of success are dramatically diminished, and you and I and the American people are tired. We just went over the 1,000 mark of brave young Americans who have sacrificed. We don't want to send them on a fruitless exercise.
Well,
on a fool's errand. Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you to tell the president what he ought to do, because I know you well enough to know that you're not going to get in to all that. We're going to know in a few minutes what he does. But one thing that interests me, that they say that this was McChrystal's policy, that the president went along with McChrystal on, gave him the troops and so forth. But my recollection is that he gave him many fewer troops than what McChrystal thought was effective to carry out this counterintelligence policy, which requires a lot of troops and a lot of time, and he put the deadline on him, and none of that was what McChrystal wanted.
Well, that's right. McChrystal had asked for 40,000. He said 30,000 and said that we would make up the additional 10,000. He didn't dispute that we needed 40,000. He said we'd make up the additional 10,000 by allied troops, the British, the Poles, Canadians, others. And guess what?
They're headed the other direction.
Yes, that's the point. Our allies are talking when they're going to pull out. But again, if you were a foreign leader and you saw the President of the United States say, look, we're withdrawing the middle of next year, wouldn't you make plans for withdrawal as well? Exactly. You see, that this uncertain trumpet resonates in so many ways.
And the president's is in the position now. He has no good solution here as far as McChrystal's concerned, because on that point, McChrystal seems to be the only one that has any kind of relationship to Karzai, who we're so dependent on, apparently.
That's a good point. Karzai volunteered yesterday, as you know, that General McChrystal was the, quote, best general that's ever been over there. That could complicate. Look, it's well known the vice president has no relationship with Karzai. Holbrooke has no relationship with him. Ambassador Eikenberry and Karzai have no relationship to speak of. So you take McChrystal out of the equation, and the consequences of this, I cannot predict right now.
John, I know you got to go, but before you leave, what situation with the border there in Arizona? The president promised additional troops. There are none.
Well, let me give you an example of what just happened yesterday. The police chief of Nogales, Arizona, its border town, reported that there have been threats, and they are credible threats by the cartels against members of the Nogales, Arizona police force. What people don't appreciate is these cartels have grown more and more powerful. 23,000 Mexicans have been murdered. The cartels are now the human smugglers as well. And the violence and the cruelty, the brutality, and the escalation of all that south of our border has incredibly emphasized our absolute need to get our border secure. They don't seem to figure that. John Kyle and I were on the floor of the Senate yesterday, and we showed these billboards of signs that are south of Interstate 8 that goes across southern Arizona, warning people in parts of Arizona to beware because it's human smuggling and drug smuggling area. And then the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Napolitano says the border is as secure as ever. Are we going to ask people to live in places where there are signs up warning people about drug smuggling and human smuggling, and the deputy head of the Border Patrol says that part of Arizona is akin to a third world country? Americans should not be condemned to live under those unsafe and insecure conditions.
John, thank you for your leadership on this issue. I know you've got to run, but thank you so much for that and for being with us again today. Good luck to you.
Always great to be with you, Fred. Bye.
All right. We'll be back in just a moment.